Now we talk about pratos típicos de Portugal. So by now I'm sure you already know quite a bit of the Portuguese culinary. So I'm going to mention some of the foods that maybe you already tried or maybe you are still thinking about trying. Starting here, I want to mention that even though Portugal is a very small country, you can find typical things north to south, east to west. Every city, region, small place has its own typical delicacy, so either savory or sweet. But that is what is very interesting also is to go visit the places and also try what it's typical from there. Here in this map that I put, it's quite small, but it's just an illustration of some typical foods that you can find in some regions. Uh, Obviously, it's not possible to have everything in that small map. So let's talk about more food. Starting here, I just want to say before that in Portugal we do have many dishes of fish, meat, and seafood. See there, the marisco is the seafood. Uh, and what I say in the second sentence is that it is not very easy to find vegetarian dishes in Portugal that were originally thought of for being vegetarian. You have some alterations, some modifications, adaptations nowadays, but originally they contain some kind of animal protein. Uh, but still, we have some more recognized dishes than others. Of course, we have their pastel de nata that maybe would be the one that more people know, but let's go to some of the others. So in this part, I'm going to talk about dishes. It's from north, center, or south. I'm not going to specify the area. Most of them, because they are so recognized already, you can find in most places. So talking about the meat dishes first. Pratos de carne mais conhecidos, the most recognized ones, são a francesinha, and that I will mention that is typical from Porto, and it's this that we have here in the image. It's almost like a sandwich. It has a lot of cuts of meat in the middle, and then it has this very specific sauce, and it is eaten with French fries usually. Then cozido à portuguesa, that is this one, and maybe if I had to select one national dish, this would be it, because cozido à portuguesa has many variations throughout the entire country and also in the islands, so that is very interesting. Everybody has its own way of making it. As you can see from the image, it contains meats, so the meats are boiled and then they are accompanied by cabbage, potato, turnip, carrot, rice even, and in some cases also white beans. Then our third dish, carne de porco à alentejana, which is this one, and this again is very particular. Carne de porco is already elucidative, but as you can see in the image, clams are also in the dish. So it's an unlikely junction, but one that works actually quite well. If you're not interested in eating the clams, you can eat carne de porco à portuguesa, and in that case, only the meat comes. It is usually also served like this. It has potatoes, like fried potatoes, in the middle, olives, black olives, and also that is not pure cauliflower, those are pickles. Next, arroz de pato. And this one, it seems quite simple, but it's something that is very appreciated by a lot of people. It's rice with shredded duck in the middle and a little bit of bacon, for example. So it's a simple enough dish, but it's very tasty. Then we leave the meats and we move forward, and we're going to talk a little bit about the fish. In Portugal, we consume and like fish very much. So I gathered here some of the most appreciated dishes in Portugal, starting with bacalhau à Brás, and this is the favorite for many visitors that like fish, but also for many Portuguese. Then polvo à lagareira, polvo, so octopus, and lagareiro because it has a lot of olive oil. And lagareiro is the place where they kept the olive oil. Sardinhas assadas, so grilled sardines are typical in the summer. If you visited Portugal and especially the big cities, Porto and Lisboa, during, let's say, June, certainly you smell them in the air. Next, peixe grelhado. And in this one, I did not specify anything because you can find all kinds of grilled fish everywhere, specifically in some restaurants in the coastal area. They are specialized in it, but also in the interior, you can find some. And it's very recognized because the fish is always very fresh. It's very good. Next, we have cataplana. Maybe you've seen this copper kind of plate somewhere in a restaurant. Cataplana is kind of like a stew. It can be of multiple things. Here, the one that we have in the image, for example, is with marisco, camarão. But it can also be of multiple fishes, and it's very tasty and it's quite healthy as well. You have boiled potatoes in there and also bell pepper, for example, pimentos. And then arroz de marisco, and this one you can also find in many restaurants, either if they are specialized in fish or not. Marisco because it usually has shrimp, but in some occasions it can have other kinds of mussels, for example. But it's very tasty. Then, talking about soups, because we like soup, but I'm only going to mention two of the most typical ones. So, starting here with this one, caldo verde. This one is made of potatoes and cabbage. So, again, this is the most typical soup for me. It has that slice of chorizo on top, but if you want to not include it, you may not include it. But beware that just because the chorizo is not in there does not mean that the dish is vegetarian, because sometimes in the broth they also use a little bit of meat. And then the one that is totally full of meat, you have sopa de pedra. It has a lot of meats, as you can see in there. It's a very earthy soup. It has beans, it has potato, all sorts of things. So it's a very filling. For example, in the winter, it's something that a lot of people like. Next, we have petiscos, or how you would say in English, snacks, but I put it here not between parentheses because sometimes people also use the word snack. But it is better to use petiscar because that is the most originally Portuguese word, and it is a regular verb, so you can use freely when you just go and grab a bite. And what can you eat when we talk about petiscar? For example, cachorro quente, the hot dog, of course. Then prego. This is a sandwich with a steak in the middle. We use carcassa, for example, that we talked about in the supermarket, the bread roll. And bifana. That is very similar to prego. The main difference here is prego uses beef and bifana uses pork as its steak. It's the only difference between them. And then if you are in the mood for something a little bit lighter, you also have salgados, and maybe you've seen them already in the pastelarias. You have many kinds. These are just some illustrations. You have made of meat, made of marisco, made of spinach even. So it's just for your choosing. Finally, o que bebemos? Because that is also important. Starting here, I was thinking more of maybe breakfast, but you can drink this whenever you want. Coffee with milk, that is very typical from every country, but we do have two beverages that are a little bit more typical from Portugal. So starting here with galão, and then we have meia de leite. Essentially, they are the same. The difference lies here in the cup that, as you can see, galão comes in a taller cup. Meia de leite, it's the same, but in a smaller cup. And what about beer? Cerveja. Sim, claro, cerveja is always an option. So we have two words for draft beer, and this depends a little bit on the region of the country where you are. In the north of Portugal, they call it fino, and then maybe in the center south, they call imperial. But I guess it really depends on the person. Either one of them can be used by anyone, but I would suggest to keep to each of the regions with the name that they use.